Okay, it's Monday, and Matt, we had one heck of a weekend in college and in pros. Let's start off in Athens, where the Longhorns rolled into town with expectations of possibly derailing the Bulldogs' season, but that's not how it happened.
Yeah, no, I said Georgia would win. Kind of liked just their edges overall and the inconsistency in that Texas offense.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's going to be probably a lot of blame placed on Arch Manning and potentially pointing out his performance. But he really suffered from the drops that they had in that game. And it didn't allow him to get an offensive flow early because on the first drive they drove down and they got three, but then the drops started coming. And that really took whatever rhythm they had built throughout that first drive and kind of tossed it to the side.
Yeah, I mean it was once you started to see Georgia get on the roll. I personally didn't think that Texas had. Texas is not the type of team against the Georgia where you're going to rebound and you're going to pull it out at the end. They just don't have the horses to do it.
Yeah, and when I talked about Texas's rushing totals last
Mm-hmm.
year and just how rough they were, only accumulating 60 yards on the ground between two games. Well, Saturday night they had 23 more. So it was another really bad rushing performance. And so when you can't run the football and then you're also dropping passes, it's just going to be really hard for you to win, especially if you're doing things like allowing Georgia to get onside kicks and not winning the turnover battle.
That onside kick. I don't know what they were thinking. I'm talking about Georgia. I know what Georgia was thinking, but I do not know what Texas was thinking because it was right there in their hands, and I had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah, it was definitely a ballsy call by Kirby Smart. I think
Mm-hmm.
is probably the way I would describe it. Definitely one where if you don't get it, now you're up 11 and they've got
Mm-hmm.
the ball in plus territory starting. You're talking about comeback, but
Right.
that didn't happen. It went the other way around. So we're talking about it in the genius aspect that it is. But it's something that Texas, like Sark talked about it in the pregame. He said there's going to be something that happens. He said we just,
Right.
when it happens, it's got to go our way, not their way. And he referenced something along the lines of like special teams, a fake punt or return, something like that. Texas's big special teams play got called back for a hold. They tackled Cash Jones when they didn't have to. And Georgia's big special teams play, they executed it perfectly. So they lost that big play battle in terms of the special team side of the ball.
Yep. And it was gone from there on. Things uh, things got things got squirrely for them.
Hmm.
Before we move back onto the SEC and the Big Ten and all the fun stuff going on here, um, I had said that I thought on Saturday that USF would do their usual get off to a slow start, but then come back and win.
Hmm.
Uh, that is not how it worked. Navy got up, and Todd Orlando's defense couldn't stop them, and so the road to the playoffs for the Bulls ended, for all intents and purposes, on Saturday. But what it did do is with what is it? Navy, North Texas, East Carolina, and Tulane, all with only one loss. This could very well open up the opportunity um, for a big for either James Madison or a Mountain West team to slide into that playoff spot.
Yeah, I think James Madison was probably the happiest team that Navy won on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
because it continues to the way they've built their resume in their case throughout the years. They haven't really there hadn't been a lot going on with them. They lost to Louisville, but other than that, you haven't really talked about James Madison, and they've just sneakily just kind of worked their way up as the Americans been collapsing on themselves.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what I will say in terms of North Texas and Tulane, They talked about it when the rankings came out. It is
Mhm.
going to be interesting because right now, as things sit, I believe James Madison is one slot ahead of North Texas.
They are. Yeah.
But if things were to hold pat and your championship game is Tulane and North Texas, that's going to be a ranked on ranked matchup.
Hmm.
Would that win be enough to catapult them above James Madison in the rankings and ultimately give them that G5 spot in the playoff?
I think. I think it's. I think it's possible. I think it's very possible. Um, I think that eh, basically the CFP would like to see Tulane because of the quality of the wins.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, any scenario that gives them two ranked teams is okay with them. I agree.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to do it, but I do get this sneaking suspicion that the American champion, unless they suffer another loss, and you're looking at somewhere in the neighborhood of 3 losses, that
Yeah,
that a 2-loss American champion might jump James Madison with their 1 loss, assuming they were to not lose as well.
right, right. I think that it's really kind of thrown things into a bit of a squirrely situation. Meanwhile, down in Oxford, um, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss made a statement, while over in Tuscaloosa, it was Oklahoma who made a statement. So things have gotten really fun in the SEC.
Hmm. Yeah, we'll just start with the Alabama and Texas game, and I'll be the first to say that I pretty much not come and publicly said it, but I buried Oklahoma in my mind when they lost that game to Ole Miss at home. Like the version of John Mateer that I had been seeing, they had lost 2 out of their last 3. At that point, I was like, I just don't think they're going to be able to bounce back if John Mateer isn't the John Mateer that he was prior to his hand injury. And you got to give Oklahoma all the credit in the world because John Mateer still hasn't bounced back and returned to form, but they're finding ways to win football games without leaning on their offense. They forced 3 turnovers. They had 17 points off turnovers yet on Saturday, and they scored 23 points in the game. So they were able to capitalize on the turnovers when they got them and score. And it wasn't like they were just getting 3 either. 2 touchdowns and a field goal is a big gap. And then you go to the other side of the football with Alabama, and what they've done on offense hasn't exactly changed throughout the year. You've got a pretty similar script. They're just generally better than you in terms of who their skill guys are and their passing concepts to where they can beat you without really having to threaten you with the run. They weren't able to do that on Saturday. Ty Simpson forced it some. They turned the ball over a ton. And when you turn it over as much as they did and you allow that game to get shortened, the later you get into it and give Oklahoma that fighting chance, the more likely they are to get you. And they got. And now the nightmare for Alabama fans is the fact that in 2 weeks, your playoff berth is going to be decided in Jordan Hare Stadium. There's a bit of a they feel like there's a hex around that place, and they got during the Saban era, and they're very very fearful going up to Auburn, Alabama in a couple weeks.
I if I were them, I'd be the same boat. I mean, if I would be, it wouldn't be one of the places I want to go. That's for damn sure.
Mm. And that's what there's still a lot of stuff to be decided. In terms of like these conference races, every week you're going to get like there's only 2 weeks left, so obviously you're starting to get a little bit of a clearer picture. But there's still a lot
Mhm.
of places where there's plenty of scenarios up in the air. The ACC, Virginia and Georgia Tech have the inside track. They're far from home. Georgia Tech has to beat Pitt at home this week, and then if they do that, they'll have punched their ticket. Um, Miami's lurking. That's the committee's dream right there is for Miami
Mhm.
to win that conference title and just kind of make it easier. But the ACC's got some interesting. The SEC scenario is fascinating because all of a sudden something that I know people in Georgia, at least the fans of Georgia, and based off what happened in the SEC championship game last year, that's not something that they really want. But now they're in a bit of a driver's seat because they're done with conference play. Their bet has been made, and they make it if Ole Miss beats Mississippi State, A&M or Alabama lose in these next 2 weeks, a conference game. So they're in a likely scenario. Ole Miss is the least likely because they have to win and they have to have A&M and Alabama lose. But again, we talked about where Alabama's going. A&M's going to Austin to play Texas. That's not a guarantee by any measure, no matter what you thought of them on Saturday night.
I'll tell you, I was very impressed with Ole Miss on Saturday night.
Yeah, they were really resilient. Like, that's the game that got them last year. They fought and they created that 10-point separation. But it was I think you got to give Ole Miss credit. You're probably going to look at it and go, well, they struggled with a really bad Florida team that got, they just got housed when they went up to Kentucky last weekend. Florida's still talented. And for those Ole Miss players in that locker room, I know it's easy. You're going to say all the right things, but that's the team that your head coach has been flirting with for the better part of about 5 weeks now, or somewhere in there. However long Billy Napier's been out, feels like an eternity at this point.
Yeah.
So he's been flirting with that opening. I mean, even to an extent before the job was even open. And there's now rumblings at Ole Miss that they're probably going to have a heart-to-heart and see if we can't get a resolution to this thing before the Egg Bowl in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's not going to happen. I think, and I can tell you from conversations I've had over the weekend with people at Florida and also within the conference, that now what I'm about to say is, I'm not saying that we're going to see Lane Kiffin head to Gainesville 100%. Okay. What I'm going to say is this. I know that there's 2 deals on the table that Lane has. If he wanted to sign a deal with, Ole Miss, it's there for any time he wants to sign it. That's not to say he won't. It's just saying it's there. There's a deal from Florida. My understanding is that Florida is willing to wait to get Lane, because Lane wants to finish this season. He wants to, and whatever that means. That could be the play they're playing. That could be a playoff. It could end up being a national championship. I don't think it's going to end up that way, but it could. So they're willing to wait. I think the folks at Oxford aren't. I think they really want this thing to be put away before, as you said, before the Egg Bowl. I don't think it's going to happen, but I don't think that they want to force the hand, of Lane at this point in time.
Which, them not wanting to force his hand feels like it lends more towards a Lane Kiffin would be leaving kind of a deal. Because if you feel really confident in the answer you're going to get, then you're probably more than happy to try and force the hand a little bit. But Ole Miss can't really afford to do that. And also, I'll put this. I think what Lane Kiffin's done there is probably going to help them if he does leave, in a sense of who they could get to replace him. Because, the public perception of Ole Miss prior to Lane Kiffin's tenure there wasn't exactly a top job in the country. But with what he's done there, he's proved that you can win. And obviously their NIL situation's a really good one they have going on down there. So Ole Miss is probably wanting that for a sense to where they know where they're going once they get to the playoffs, and they can go ahead and start a head coaching search and look for their next guy, because they think that they're probably going to be one of the more appetizing jobs on the market if Florida comes off.
I'll tell you what, if if Lane decides he doesn't want to go to Florida, right,
Mm-hmm.
and stays there, I think it's all good. But
Mm-hmm.
I also think if he does decide to go to Florida, I think there's a very good chance that that becomes that Ole Miss job becomes one of the best in the country.
Yeah. I mean, because right now the jobs that you're putting it up against are Penn State and LSU. And, I don't know if Penn State and Ole Miss would be kind of diving into the same pool, but you do have a list of candidates. And, I heard it somewhere that, John Summerall was probably going to be a call Ole Miss would make if Lane were to choose to leave to go to Florida. So they're going to have good options available. I think Auburn doesn't want to see Ole Miss come open because they're in competition with them directly.
Mm-hmm. Well, I heard a funny one when you're talking about John this weekend, right? He gets a call from the governor of Louisiana,
Oh boy.
and I'm sorry.
I said, oh boy.
Yeah, and here's the thing: he thought that that the governor was calling him to say that to congratulate him on his win, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that wasn't what he was doing. He called him to find out if he wanted the LSU job.
Shocker.
And I'm thinking, are you kidding me? That the governor of the state of Louisiana is getting involved in hiring the LSU coach.
Yeah, that's just not good.
You think?
Yeah, if you're like an LSU fan, the people of Louisiana, you can't enjoy the way that he's using this thing. It's like I don't even know at this point. I'm not sure if it's even him thinking like this is a political thing for him more than he just feels like he has to for the quote people of Louisiana because of all the money they aren't going to spend on Brian Kelly's buyout, even though he's telling them they are.
I don't. You follow Josh Pate, right?
Yeah.
Okay. I traded some text with Josh, and I'm not saying anything that Josh didn't say. He said right now they'd have trouble getting, the Lafayette High School head coach from down the street in Baton Rouge. At this point, that there's just that the toxic state of LSU has gone to the point where right now the Tulane job looks better.
Yeah, which is ridiculous. I mean, that's purely on the governor. So
Yeah,
he's going to I think he's going to have to face the music here with his own personal reelection status with how much he's messed up this LSU head coaching job.
Well, you can always get another governor. You can't get another top situation with regard to a super, an LSU team, and I guarantee you, they'll actually be. I can see the commercials now, the 30-second spots. He's pissed off James Carville now. That's not a good thing to do. I mean, Mr. LSU, and the governor didn't even go to LSU.
Yeah, he's dug himself a heck of a hole there.
Yeah. So, let's move over to the folks over at the Big Ten. That's a wide open race still. In a rainstorm in Southern California, not to be confused with the song that says it never does rain in Southern California, but those of us who have been there many, many times know that this is the time it does rain in Southern California, and it really did. And USC escaped with a win over Iowa, but this week they face Oregon, and the two former Pac-12 teams. So only one of them is going to survive that one.
Yeah, this is obviously the big week for USC and where their season is going to go overall.
Mm-hmm.
No disrespect to Iowa, but I do think that this weekend against Iowa is like really positive in terms of USC and just kind of that program's image as a whole. Because
Mm-hmm.
Lincoln Riley has long since been known for his, or criticized for what people believe to be a lack of physicality on the lines of scrimmage
Mm-hmm.
with these USC teams. And you beat an Iowa team that is their identity, that is their calling card. It
Mm-hmm.
has been for a while. They don't stray from it. And you did it in the rain too. So they kind of
Yeah.
like welcomed you into their arena when you're playing in the rain, even though you're at home. And they handled it with they were down early, but they came back, they
Mm-hmm.
fought, they persevered. And that has probably tells me more about where USC is in terms of me feeling good about whether or not they can win this football game this weekend.
I'm still a little light on their defense.
It leaves some to be desired, definitely.
Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you what, if Lincoln Riley can keep it close or even beat Oregon, right? He can start returning to hell. He could get to the defense. The old when John McKay was there, when Pete Carroll was there, when they had the number of star coaches that they had during the good old days at USC, they basically just had their choice of everybody in Southern California
Mm-hmm.
at all the major high schools. Hell, they could go to Mater Day, which turned out probably more pros than any other school in Southern California, and just pick who they wanted. And I think that the coaches are starting to look at USC and go, you know what? Maybe just maybe this is where my guys ought to go.
Mm-hmm. Something that I don't think people talk about when it turns in terms of Lincoln Riley and the success that they're having this year in particular
Mm-hmm.
is it's been a quiet year for him,
Yeah.
which I think is really big because when he got out there, it was before he left. It was a lot of the glitz and the glamour of would Lincoln Riley leave? Is he going to leave for the Cowboys job? Is he going to leave for another head coaching job? They did leave, and now he's at Southern California and all the press that comes with that job. And then he makes that move and he's not successful, so he maintains the spotlight that he garnered. And up until really, I would say probably this year and last year, that had just kind of been the same story. Is he's sitting there in the limelight, and I'm not sure it's something that he necessarily relished in. And now it's just kind of been quiet for USC these last couple of years. They've gone about their business, and they've gotten better as a team overall. A lot less star power, a lot less eyes on the program, and it's working out well for them. And because they've flown below the radar, and now they're a win in Eugene away from likely being in the college football playoff. Save them blowing up against UCLA in the last week of the season.
Yeah, and one of the things that I can tell you that I've heard from my friends down in LA and San Diego in that area is that Lincoln has done a very good job of reaching out to the high school coaches down there. That he has not he's not the first year that I was told that he was more of a kind of a you know assumed if you will that the star players in Southern California would basically rotate over and come to him. In other words, he wasn't out there beating the bushes to talk to people. But that changed, and I think the reason it changed was because of the with the NIL and all that situation going the way it is, that the boosters got in there and told them, look, we want Southern California kids on this football team,
Mm-hmm.
and we're putting money in this. And so what we want you to do and your coaches to do is beat we don't want to have Arizona State taking kids out of Los Angeles. We don't want Oregon coming down here and taking the star players.
Mm-hmm.
So, because Dan Lanning, just basically signed half the 4 and 5 star players in Southern California. The other half either went to Arizona State or, um, up to to Washington. So that pipeline is a pipeline that they wanted to shut off, and I think it's going to be an interesting deal because you're right. I think Lincoln now. We talked about Lane. Lane has been at Ole Miss for 6 years. He's
Mm-hmm.
matured. It's kind of like he put down roots and decided, you know what, this is what I want to do. I want to be a college football coach. I don't want to coach in the pros. I don't want to, I don't want to be one of these gadflies who runs around and makes a change. If he does make the change to Florida, it'll be the last coaching place he stops. If he stays at Ole Miss, I assume that's the same situation. I don't think he wants to move anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I think Lincoln Riley's in that same boat. I don't think Lincoln Riley now, you know, has aspirations to be an NFL coach or to coach anywhere else. I mean, USC is a big job in a big town in a city where they love the
Mm-hmm.
school. So maybe, just maybe, we're seeing the maturity of Lincoln Riley.
Yeah, which that that alone, the building relationships. There was, you know, I feel like the running joke online has been in recent years when USC lands a big commit. It's all right. Well, they landed him a year prior to signing day. How long until he decommits? And that's long been since a running joke for USC and their commitments. That's not happened so far in this recruiting class. If I remember correctly, they still have the number one class in 2026. And it's
Yeah.
something where these guys are sticking and they're staying with USC. And yeah, you're going to get decommits. It's going to happen with every class because that's the way NIL is now. But you're going to see a
Hmm.
majority of that class stick together and be at USC together. And that's going to be a direct result of exactly what you're talking about. And, I get it. It's probably something similar to like Brian Kelly at LSU. I'm not sure that Brian Kelly was necessarily like, I'm not sure he was going to the beach because he thought like, I don't care about this job. I don't want to win. I think he went to the beach because he thought he could and still sign the guys. And his
Hmm.
fatal flaw was at a place that he took winning a lot more seriously in terms of urgency at LSU. Meanwhile, USC they're content with it. Based on where they were, they're still at a better floor than they were at prior to Lincoln Riley being there. And now that you've had that talk and you've given them the resources and they've bought in on the recruiting, now you can start to kind of push your momentum in the right direction because you've been relatively close with him not bought in on the recruiting side of things. Now with him
Hmm.
bought in on the recruiting side of things, you have the ability to, really push your ceiling higher and be much more in that upper echelon of teams in terms of chasing a national title year in and year out.
To your point, right now there's in rivals on 3 and 27. I'm sorry, 247 sports. All have them. All have USC's 2026 class is the top class in the country.
Yeah, and
They have
that's
34. They have 35 hard commits, which
yeah,
that's an unusual amount
it
at
is a
this
lot.
these days.
Which I wonder if it also wasn't a feeling that Lincoln Riley had, where after Caleb Williams left, they brought in Mayava, who's now their starting quarterback,
Right.
but they kind of played a little bit of that quarterback roulette. And I wonder if he's now understanding the importance of setting kind of a baseline in terms of your high school recruiting and not relying as much on that transfer portal, kind of like they did when he first got there with
Hmm.
Caleb Williams, and them attempting to kind of piece that roster together year in and year out.
Right. And you don't want. I mean, Lincoln has also worked the portal, which is something that a lot of people are not too crazy about, but he's done that. But I think if he can if he can keep, he's not gonna. I don't think he's gonna hold the 35 commitments. Okay, that I don't think is gonna happen. But I don't think that he's gonna lose a lot of them, and I think that's just as important as not. You know, he can backfill whatever he needs in that regard. So
Hmm.
it's a good omen if you're an SC fan. Let's move over to the big. the Big 12, man, you know, I don't know about you, but Utah looked really good the other day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Utah's kind of sitting in a really good spot, all things considered. The way their year has gone is they need a little help around them in terms of the chaos,
Right.
but with the committee having them ranked where they are, if they win out and they continue to win in the ways that they won this past weekend,
Hmm.
I think it's very much a case where they could kind of control their own destiny. I know that may sound, counterintuitive. Well, how can they control it, but they can only kind of control it? If they win the way they win, there's a very good argument that they'll push inside that top 10 anyways. Maybe depending on where the movement is, because you're going to have teams that play each other up in that top group anyways. So there is that aspect of it. They don't really have a chance at that conference title game because the two teams that are in first place are the two teams that they've lost to in conference, which means that you're relying on Texas Tech or BYU to suffer two more conference losses in order for you to be in the conference championship game. So I don't think that path is alive, but they are very much fans of chaos here in the coming weeks.
Yeah, and they're winning with stop points.
Yes.
And I know, if you haven't followed college football, let me explain one thing: style points matters, uh,
Big time.
big time. And I'll tell you where some style points helped one team and killed another, and that's with Notre Dame and Pitt as we move into the ACC. Uh, I thought Pitt could keep it close. I thought that there was, I had great expectations that Pitt could play, you know, at least a competitive game. I didn't think they were going to beat Notre Dame, but I did think they could play competitive, and it wasn't even close. So either Notre Dame is really, really good, or Pitt, you know, is not quite as good as I thought they were.
Yeah, Pitt's definitely it hurts for them, but it also they did. I do wonder how much of the mindset they came in with, like, do we really need this one, or are we more focused on what's ahead? Because it's really hard to look past the quote that Pat Narduzzi gave in the middle of the week and think that it may not have played a factor. Because if that's the way the head coach is thinking, you look as the head coach as kind of obviously it's the point of your team. You would hope that it is the message of the team as well. And if that's the message of the team, then you're going to get the performance the way you got on Saturday. I looked at those first couple of drives and I was like, okay, like they have a chance. I thought they could possibly even win it based off those first couple
Mhm.
drives, but they didn't capitalize on their opportunities when they had them to start the game. And after that, they just let Jeremiah Love run all over them. And from there, it was over. But the ACC it was another bad weekend for them just in terms of optics. You didn't
Mhm.
have the same type of like top teams following that they had last weekend, but Georgia Tech winning in the fashion that they did. Miami looked good, but Pitt losing the way they did. Georgia Tech and Pitt are your top two teams right now.
Right, and they
Um,
play each other this week.
yeah, save Virginia. That's really the biggest one the ACC had was Virginia beating Duke, and not only beating them, but they beat them fairly handily, all things considered.
Right. Yeah, and the nightmare scenario of Duke getting in there. I think we can put that one to bed. But
Hmm.
they still have nightmares because, as you said earlier, the Miami situation. I had said, wrongly. I'll bite the bullet on this one. I thought this was going to be a game against NC State where Miami was just going to go, have a Mario Cristobal coach freeze moment, but they didn't. They, to your point, handled their business, got in there, got out, and made it look easy. So we'll see. I mean, this is they're eating their young in the ACC, but we'll see how everything kind of shakes out here.
And I mean that's what they're facing another situation of that this weekend when Pitt goes down to Atlanta, and
Hmm.
you've got two of your top three teams that are going to be playing each other. this weekend, 1 week prior to the season's
Mm-hmm.
end. It's not ideal for the conference as a whole.
No, and you know they're they're not marquee teams. That's the problem. This is and that's no disrespect meant to both either Georgia Tech or Pitt. My father graduated from Pitt. Half my family graduated from Pitt. So I definitely have no Harper, no ill feelings against the Panthers. Um, but you know, it's been a long time since both of those teams have been in the spotlight, and both of them have been winning games on the razor's edge to begin with. So we'll
Hmm.
see how that one plays out as we move into, as you say, um, there's just you're running out of games.
Yeah, you are. And like there there's just no I feel like the only time or the only situation for the ACC where they're going to finish up the season and it's going to look good optically for the conference is
Mm-hmm.
if Miami does find a way to be their conference bid for the playoff.
Mm-hmm.
Miami is the best talent-wise team, in the ACC. They're not the most consistent. That's Georgia
Mm-hmm.
Tech. Georgia Tech knows how to win. Virginia knows how to win. Pitt knows how to win. These teams know how to win, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of situationally, in which Miami hasn't been able to do when they've been given the opportunities late in games.
Mm-hmm.
They had chances in both Louisville and the SMU game, and they didn't finish the job in either one of those.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're talking about teams that can go toe to toe, talent wise, with Georgia and Ohio State and A&M,
Mm-hmm.
and those top teams that you're thinking of, then they're the representative you want if you're the ACC.
Right. Let's slide over to the NFL. Perhaps you can explain it to me. How well, how does how does Atlanta lose two games to Carolina?
I really don't know. I think that might be your loss that you're starting to look and say, is this going to be the nail in the coffin that people have kind of been waiting on? They talked about it last week after that really, really ugly loss to Indianapolis,
Mm-hmm.
across the pond. People were not happy with the late game situation there.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like more of the same out of Atlanta and Raheem Morris and that coaching staff. And once again, you found a way to lose late. If you're Atlanta, you had a lead late in that fourth quarter. You
Mm-hmm.
lose it late. You go to overtime. You can't finish the job in overtime. I know you lost Michael Penix. In all fairness, you didn't look great when he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
They have some questions that need answered in Atlanta badly right now.
You know, I don't know if you've caught this, but Penix will be out for at least 4 weeks. So it's Kirk Cousins' team now.
Yeah.
And I mean, they gave Kurt a lot of money last year.
Hmm.
And, you know, I'm, I don't know that, I, I don't know who the hell you could get in there to coach the Falcons that's gonna make them a winner.
Yeah. I don't honestly know that much either at this point because it feels like you're just a revolving door of head coaches at a
Mm-hmm.
certain point. And it's weird with the Falcons because when you watch the Falcons, you watch them over the years when they've been transitioning head coaches. Like
Mm-hmm.
Arthur Smith's time in Atlanta wasn't one that ended because Atlanta was just this like horrible product of a football team. Their offense was pretty stale with him at the helm, all things
Right.
considered. But they still were a team where it was like frustrating loss after frustrating loss for what felt like the entirety of his tenure.
Mm-hmm.
And you're starting you've started in a similar spot with Raheem Morris as your head coach now. So it's just confusing because when you watch the Falcons and when they haven't and them not be good these past few years,
Mm-hmm.
it's been situations where you feel like they should be much better. It's not like you're watching the Cleveland Browns and you're just like, yeah, this is just an awful football team. I understand why they are where they are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think the same is typically said for Atlanta and their struggles that they've had.
No, no. I'm going to throw a name at you. If they choose to leave Raheem, I'm going to throw Todd Monken's name in there. I think
Yeah.
he's done a very good job as the OC with the Ravens.
Well, anyone who lives in the state of Georgia that is both a Bulldogs and Falcons fan will probably be right there on board with you on the Todd Monken thing. I mean, poor Mike Bobo hasn't been able to stop getting the comparisons since the day Monken left Athens. So I would say you're probably going to have a lot of people in the state that would be on board with that idea. I am as well. I think he's done a really good job. Their offense has been much better, which is odd to say because Lamar was still the quarterback there. Like that wasn't something that changed. But it felt like when Todd got there, the offense got more complete, a little bit more creative, and you started seeing them win a lot more consistently and look a lot more consistent on the offensive side of the football since he got to Baltimore.
There was a play yesterday in the Baltimore game. I don't know if you saw it or not, where, and this, Todd Monken had drawn this up. He's got a package where they play a wildcat, where the tight end is the wildcat, and yesterday was Andrews, and he just rolled into the end zone for a touchdown. That in essence was one of the backbreakers for in that game against Cleveland. So his creativity, even though he's got, who in their wildest dreams would think, all right, let's take the ball out of the hands of Lamar Jackson and put it in the hands of our tight end. But it worked. He has dialed up some really creative offensive formations that, while they were without Lamar, okay, they lost some games without Lamar. There's no question. But it wasn't the offense that lost those games. It was the defense. And so in his 2 years, his 2 year stint or 3, or I think is it 2, maybe going on 3, or I don't know. Anyway, he's done a very good job and a very creative job in running the show with the offense in Baltimore.
Yeah, he has. And, I think it's been shown in terms of, I think he's very highly thought of just in terms of his, the fans in Baltimore like him a lot. They obviously don't have any complaints about the offense and the way Lamar's played. You can make the argument he deserved to win back-to-back MVP awards last year. So the offense has been rolling there, and that seems to be what everybody focuses on in Atlanta. That's their big thing, is who's going to fix the offense? Who's going to fix the offense?
It was funny. John Harbaugh said that in his post-game press conference yesterday, they asked him if he made the call for that play, and he said, "I didn't even know what that play was." So let's go. At least he was honest about it. John laughed. He goes, he goes, I heard as anybody who's been around football, you know that it's like translating Mandarin Chinese. Okay. Whatever they called that play, when it was being called, and of course John hears it through his headset, it was not something that was on John's bingo card to know what the hell was going on. But results are results, and he was happy with it. So there you go. There. You know what? I can you pick? Because I can't. Can you pick who's actually the best teams in the NFL? Have we got to the point where the parity has gotten so interesting across the league that we really don't know who the best teams are?
Yeah, you kind of have your groups. I think what people may be having trouble with this year in terms of the best teams argument is they kind of got in a groove. Everybody kind of got in the groove. It's like, all right, it's Buffalo, it's Kansas City, it's Baltimore, Those are kind of your big three. Cincinnati,
Mhm.
when Joe Burrow was healthy, is like, all right, these have been our teams here for a little while. You can expect all these teams to kind of make a run at the AFC title. And then, for the last 2 years, you kind of been like, well, you're expecting Houston to pop. Right now, the teams leading the AFC are the New England Patriots, the Denver Broncos, and oh God, there's another one,
The
the
Colts.
Indianapolis Colts. Those are your three clubhouse leaders in the AFC in those three divisions, and that's not what you expected. You had Bills there, or you had the Texans there, you had the Chiefs with the Broncos, and all of them have played well. And I think there's just a certain level of like unwillingness to admit that they are what they are right now, because everybody's just kind of sitting back expecting them to maybe revert to form later in the season.
Well, right now, Kansas City is out of the playoffs and Baltimore's out of the playoffs, and they both are sitting at 5-5.
Which Baltimore is a bit of a different case than
Yeah,
Kansas City is in
yeah.
terms of it. Maybe Kansas City can be upset and say, well, we didn't have our receivers, and
Hmm.
maybe that's a valid argument if one of them didn't get arrested and do it to himself.
Right.
Um, but it's not like some of these other teams aren't without their own share of injuries by any measure.
Hmm.
But these are the teams that have fallen on the side of potentially scheduling luck. I know a lot of people have made the comment about New England, and what I will say is it's valid. Their schedule doesn't look fantastic, but as you're looking down the schedule, the teams that they've beaten recently, when they've come across a team that is on the higher side of the skill level scale, they've won those games too. So they beat Tampa, they beat Buffalo when they had them. You know,
Hmm.
Atlanta scared them at home, but they found a way to win that game too. So you play who you're given on the schedule in terms of
Sure.
the NFL, and they're beating everyone that's been scheduled for them.
Hmm. And you've got, you know, the Eagles are playing, you know, kind of old school football, right? They're they're using the defense to help them. The offense is, chips in from time to time to make sure that they get enough points. They're not the Eagles are not winning by style points, but they're winning. The Rams, I mean, I think the Rams are legit. I don't know if they're a legit 8-2, but they're legit. The Bears surprised, but Caleb Williams has done some masterful work there. The Bucks are hanging on life support at this point because of injuries, but they play the Rams this week out in Los Angeles. After that, they don't play a team with a 500 record for the rest of the season.
Yeah, if there was ever a conference to be on life support in, it's the NFC South, especially this
Right.
year. So, you can survive a lot longer in that conference than you can in some of these other ones, because if you're Tampa Bay, you're leading the pack right now. Like, this isn't
Hmm.
an issue for you. It's a non-issue, all things considered. So, they have their work cut out for them in terms of the fact that I think they still are the best team. I think they're the most well coached team
Hmm.
in that league, or in that conference or division. There we go. Got there eventually. Um,
It's not where you start; it's where you
yeah,
end, there, buddy.
yeah. Because I mean, you watch that Carolina Atlanta game, you're like, okay, but we've beat both those teams. New Orleans is what New Orleans is. So
Hmm.
if all they have to do is tread water and win that division, and then you're starting to hope that maybe around playoff time you get some guys back from some
Right.
injuries. Maybe you get a little help there at the season's end when you go into that playoff push.
Hmm. Well, right now, um, we just went to the Rams, the Bears, the Bucks. Seattle's got the wild card. Green Bay's got the wild card. But hanging right there in 7, 8, and 9 are San Francisco, Detroit, and Dave Canales' Carolina Panthers at 6-5, hovering a half game behind the Buccaneers.
Yeah, they're sitting there, but I
I, I
I'm
don't believe they're a 6-5 team, but that's okay.
yeah, I'm still very skeptical of the Panthers. Not to disrespect what they've done this season,
No,
because
Dave's done a great job.
they've played much better. But as I watch them as a team and as a whole, I just have a very hard time believing that what they have is consistent enough to be able to last through this back half of the season in order to make a playoff push.
Mm-hmm.
And I
Well,
think part of that is a big reason of that is just the fact they haven't done it. It's been so long since somebody has won in Carolina.
right.
It's really been since Cam Newton left, or since when Cam Newton started not playing as well, and that Carolina team started to trend down, and then he left, and they have not been any form of that since then.
Yeah, and they're not going to be any form of that. They don't. They just don't have the horses to do it. Um, Yesterday, as we said, I mean that wasn't Carolina's game to win. That was Atlanta's game to lose,
Mm-hmm.
and that's happened on a couple of occasions with Carolina, where they've hit the play. I want to give them their respect. They hit the play. I mean, if somebody gives you the opportunity to win, you got to take it, and they've been able to take it. So they probably got 3 of those 6 wins or games that they, by all manner of speaking, should have lost,
Mm-hmm.
but they found a way to win, and you got to give them credit for that. So good on them for finding a way. And Dave is doing a good job with not as much talent as he would like to have, but enough talent to get him to 6-5.
And I think if anything, if nothing else,
Mm-hmm.
this season for Carolina should cement one thing, and that's that Dave Canales is going to be your head coach for the foreseeable future. These teams that don't play well, they tend to move off a head coach.
Mm-hmm.
Now, granted, sometimes a season like this where you overachieve relative to your expectations can be dangerous. I think you might be seeing a little bit with that in the Browns and Kevin Stefanski. Stefanski had that really good first year where Joe Flacco was quarterback. They went to Houston. They won the wild card game, and they looked like a really good team. And since then, the results have not been similar. But that one season bought Kevin Stefanski a lot of leeway in terms of where he was allowed to go in Cleveland.
Yeah, I think in fairness to Dave, I think he is a good head coach, and I think that given some time, he'll build that Carolina team into a reputable team. If Canales had the talent that the Falcons had, my God, who knows what could be happening?
Yeah, because I think in terms of another thing that you are probably also learning with this season is that maybe Bryce Young's not the guy. I mean, he feels like he is fighting for his life every weekend out there. I mean, he's tough and they're winning, and that's good. But it also feels like you're, like we've talked about, you're kind of scraping by right now with the way the offense is played.
Yeah, I mean, it would be if he had a more mobile quarterback, he'd be in much better shape.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, we'll see in the draft how they decide to play it. There'll be some guys who will be on the move in the off season, so we'll see how that plays out.
Mm-hmm.
Let's finish today with 2 teams that have 2 of the largest followings in the National Football League, in the Dallas Cowboys and the Raiders, but they ain't won anything in a long time.
No, they have not. What's it called? And they're gonna face off on a Monday night game that I'm gonna be honest, I really don't know what to expect out of this game this evening. I think it's too. I know the Raiders are bad. I think the Cowboys aren't very good, but I can't say that with as much certainty. But depending on how good of a fight the Raiders give the Cowboys, I think that's more of a litmus test on how bad this football team is, as opposed to how good they could be.
well, these are brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Dallas hasn't won a world champion, a Super Bowl since 1994. I can't remember when Oakland won, and now they're, of course, well, they were Los Angeles. They were Oakland, Los Angeles, back to Oakland, now to Las Vegas. Been a long time since they won a championship.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, they have tremendous national followings and very, very loyal fans. But I just don't. I mean, hell, I'd rather watch Landman tonight on Paramount Plus than this game, because whoever wins, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't. I mean, neither one of these teams are going anywhere. So, if you're a football fan and you're a betting person and that's what you want to do, then have at it. Or if you've got some of these guys on your fantasy football team, I get it. But I'm tired of the Cowboys. I'm tired of Oakland. I mean, the Raiders being held up as standard bearers for the National Football League. They haven't been relevant for so many years. It doesn't even matter.
Mm-hmm.
I
Yeah,
mean, hell, Jimmy Johnson was. Well, it was actually Jimmy Johnson's team. It wasn't Jimmy Johnson, the coach. It was Barry Switzer that coached him to the championship the last time they had it. Um, and God only knows, I can't even remember who coached the Raiders to that title.
might have been John Madden.
Yeah, it might have been. But that's it's one of those things where you sit back and go, okay, good luck and Godspeed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, not exactly the most appetizing game in terms of entertainment
No.
tonight.
As I said, entertainment wise, I think my for those of you who are Landman fans with me, with Billy Bob Thornton and that group, I think I'm gonna spend some time catching up on the second and third. They just dropped the third year for Landman this week, and or second year, I'm sorry, the Landman this week. So I think I might just check in and see what's going on with that one. So we'll see.
It's not a half bad idea.
Yeah, there you go. All right, any final words before we get out, Shahab, before today?
No, I don't think we talked about it all that much. Texas A&M's comeback this weekend was ridiculous, and it's
Oh, that
something
was
that
you're right. That was an oversight on my part.
their ability to come back and win. I know that's got to be. It feels different now if you're an Aggie fan, I think, because for so long you've kind of lived in that world of how are we going to mess it up? How are we going to revert back to the jokes have been 8-4 for a lot of people in terms of the Aggies. 8-4 is now out of the window. You
Mm-hmm.
lost a game or you won a game that you were supposed to lose.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get it twisted. You made it look relatively easy coming back from 27 points down.
Right.
It's anything but. And that's a really good win for Mike Elko and his team. And
Mm-hmm.
now, you go beat Texas, you're in the SEC title. You
Mm-hmm.
control that. So you're really close to everything that you would hope for in year 2 under Mike Elko. Really,
Right.
it's incredible what he's done with that place in such a short amount of time.
100%. He deserves it. And being the uncle of 2 graduates from Texas A&M University, I would be. I feel badly now that that I didn't pick up on the A&M comeback this weekend, but you can't get them all. So my apologies to A&M fans. It's a great university. It's a hell of a place to go to watch a football game.
Yeah.
So there you go, boys and girls.
And
Go ahead.
on top of that win, Mike Elko signed a contract extension, ensuring that he will remain at A&M for the next foreseeable future.
Right, and that Jimbo Fisher has I think they have a restraining order that he's not allowed anywhere near the stadium for the next 10 years. So
yeah, that'd be understandable.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, we'll have plenty to talk about tomorrow, and we'll get a little more in depth into what's going to happen in as we only have a couple of games left on the schedule. As you said, was it Clemson finished their ACC schedule? They're done. And there's been a couple of other schools in the ACC that are finished with their schedule for the season.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll see how that works out, and what goes on from there. But there's a lot of football left to be played, boys and girls, both in the SEC, the ACC, and the Big 10 and the Big 12. And there's right now, the fun part of it is there's a lot of scenarios here where you might just find out that somebody sneaks in that shouldn't be there.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't think they should be
there. Yep. And there's teams that are going to get knocked out late too. It still feels so open, even though we're 2 weeks out.
Right. It's gonna be fun. So anyway, all right, boys and girls, it's Monday. We had a lot of fun. Thank you, Matthew. As always, it's a pleasure. And we will see you tomorrow around that 3 o'clock hour. Take care, everybody.